Good evening. Oh, okay, maybe we'll try this one. Does that work? I don't, yeah.
Test, test.
Yeah, I don't think. Thanks. What's that?
Test, test, test. Test. Test, test.
I can hear you on the Zoom side, just let you know that. Thank you.
Uh,
evening. And then the second item, which was not before the Planning Commission, but something that may be of interest, the city is looking to purchase an existing BMR unit to preserve it in its BMR housing stock. So that is, again, also on the council agenda tomorrow. And that concludes our announcements for right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? No? Okay. So we'll move to public comment. Under public comment, the public may address the commission on any subject not listed in the agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once for a limit of 3 minutes. You are not required to provide your name or city of residence, but it is helpful. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda and therefore cannot respond to non-agenda issues other than to provide general information. I'll turn to our clerk, Mr. Turner, to explain how members of the public can participate.
Thank you, Vice Chair Doe. So during the public comment period, members will have an opportunity to share their comments or questions remotely by clicking the hand icon on your screen, upon which staff will introduce you and activate your microphone. If you are calling into tonight's meeting, you can click *9 on your keypad, and that will notify us that you would like to provide comment. If multiple people are speaking from the same account, please let us know at the beginning of your time, and we will make sure that each person has a chance to speak. Each member of the public will have 3 minutes to give their public comment. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Chair Doe. At the moment, I don't see any hands raised for general public comment. And
Okay, we'll give it a few moments. Any hands now?
no hands.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and close public comment. There are no items on the consent calendar, so that brings us to F1, one item under the public hearing, and this was an item that was continued from the meeting of October 23rd. F1, general plan amendments, zoning ordinance amendments, El Camino Real downtown specific plan amendments, and rezoning City of Menlo Park housing element update project. The City of Menlo Park is proposing to amend the general planned land use element, zoning ordinance Title 16 of the Menlo Park Municipal Code, zoning map, and El Camino Real downtown specific plan in association with the implementation of the 2023 to 2031 sixth cycle housing element adopted by the City Council on January 31st, 2023. The proposed changes are intended to provide capacity to meet the city's regional housing needs allocation, or RHNA, of 2,946 dwelling units and are generally summarized below. So these changes include update the Affordable Housing Overlay, or AHO, to further promote affordable housing development. Allow residential development opportunities in existing commercial and retail zoning districts. Increase residential densities in the R3 apartment zoning district around downtown. Permit ministerial review for certain housing development on inventory sites that were not developed during the previous housing element cycle. Create a residential overlay to encourage residential development on underused or redeveloping sites. Allow family daycare homes with up to 14 children as a permitted use in residential zoning districts. And also under consideration are changes to amend the specific plan to implement housing element program H4L. And I believe now, Mr. Smith, do you have a presentation?
I do. Thank you, Vice Chair Doe. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. I have a brief presentation as a follow-up from the previous meeting that I will share with you. So as always, just going to give a very quick background for anybody who's just tuning in for the first time. The City Council adopted the housing element on January 31st of this year, and the housing element is a plan for the city's housing needs through 2031. It includes an inventory of sites that could support development of housing through the period 2023 to 2031. And it also includes goals, policies, and programs to improve equity and reduce disparities in housing throughout the community. The city's regional housing needs allocation, which we call RHNA for short, is nearly 3,000 units through 2031. And of those units, almost 1,500 must be affordable at the lower and moderate income levels. The housing element does contain programs that commit the city to implement zoning changes by January 31st of 2024 to help the city meet its RHNA for the next 8 years. The housing element includes a number of zoning-related programs that are scheduled to be implemented by early next year, and they include an update of the Affordable Housing Overlay, which we also call the AHO, to incentivize development of affordable units up to 150 dwelling units per acre for 100% affordable development, modifying non-residential zoning districts to allow mixed use and certain residential development with a density of 30 dwelling units per acre or more in certain cases, allowing development up to 30 dwelling units per acre for R3 parcels around downtown, 20 dwelling units per acre for all R3 parcels over 100,000 square feet, and increasing lot coverage to 55% for all R3 and R4 zones. Modifying the specific plan to increase densities up to 100 dwelling units per acre at the bonus level of development, and changing other development regulations in the specific plan area proportionally. Allowing ministerial review for 5 sites that didn't develop with housing during the previous housing element planning period on the condition that they provide at least 20% of units affordable to lower income households. Creating a new residential overlay to allow residential development on 5 sites where the underlying zoning or a conditional development permit would otherwise not allow it, and allowing all family daycare homes as permitted uses in residential zoning districts. This meeting is a continuation of the October 23rd meeting, where the proposed amendments to the general plan, specific plan, zoning ordinance, and zoning map were discussed. As part of the staff report packet, draft resolutions and ordinances have been provided and reflect the outlined changes from the October 23rd staff report, plus some other minor adjustments based on feedback that we received at the Planning Commission meeting. I'll give a brief overview of those proposed updates since the last meeting in the next few slides. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission use this evening's meeting to make recommendations to the City Council on the proposed amendments, and the Council is tentatively scheduled to review the Planning Commission's recommendations at a November 28th public hearing. So quickly, I'll go through the changes since October 23rd. This slide shows table 1 of the current staff report, which includes 2 recommended modifications to the CMU neighborhood mixed use zoning district that is proposed. So first, financial services and professional offices uses were proposed as permitted uses at the October 23rd meeting, meaning that they wouldn't need a use permit in order to operate on a site. But staff is now proposing leaving them as administratively permitted uses, which is how they're currently classified in the C2B zoning district, which was sort of the inspiration for the new CMU zone. And this would provide some more discretion and also really focus on prioritizing retail, personal services, restaurants, and housing as permitted uses in the CMU district. So for instance, a bank or a tax preparation office, a dental office, other similar financial and office uses would need an administrative permit, which could be appealed to the Planning Commission for review if there were community concerns raised. Second, the second item on this table would be to preserve existing allowances for drive-throughs on the Chevron Station and Belhaven shopping center parcels in Belhaven. Staff is recommending including up to 1 drive-through establishment per development site on either side of Hamilton Avenue at Willow Road. So that would allow, for instance, a drive-through pharmacy, a coffee shop, a restaurant, or similar uses with a drive-through to locate at the sites, one on each site. And the Planning Commission would review the request before it could be granted as a conditional use. A couple of other changes are listed in Table 2 of the staff report. So like the proposed CMU zoning changes, staff considered feedback and previous direction from the Planning Commission and City Council at the August study session and proposed some minor changes to the R3 zoning district. So under item 1 on this table, minimum bicycle parking requirements are now proposed, and they're reflective of the requirements in other residential and mixed-use districts that are being modified. So that would be 1.5 bicycle spaces long-term. So that'd be sort of your enclosed spaces, 1.5 per unit would be required, and then 10% additional short-term bike parking required for visitors. And then under item 2 in this table, residential design standards and green and sustainable building requirements are proposed to be added to the R3 district for properties that would be developing 3 or more units. And the design standards and green and sustainable building requirements are very comparable, basically the same as those proposed for the other zoning districts that are being updated through this process. So next steps for zoning, as I mentioned, the City Council is tentatively scheduled to review and take action on the proposed resolutions and ordinances on November 28th. If action is taken at the November 28th meeting, the amendments would be adopted at a December 2023 City Council meeting, and those ordinances would then become effective 30 days later in January 2024, prior to the statutory deadline for adoption, that January 31st, 2024 deadline. And so that briefly covers the information in the staff report, but certainly if there are questions about this staff report or the October 23rd Commission staff report, we'd be happy to address those. Thank you.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions for Mr. Smith or for staff before public comment? All right, then why don't we move to public comment? And Mr. Turner, if you could also inform us how many, once you know how many commenters we have.
Alrighty, so just as a reminder, if you would like to give public comment, please click the raise hand button on your screen, or if you're calling in to tonight's meeting, click *9. At the moment, I only see one public commenter, but a couple more trickling in. About 3 so far. So we will start with Pam Jones. Pam, you should be able to unmute yourself now, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. This is Pam Jones, resident of Menlo Park, the Bellhaven neighborhood. Just a short statement here, and that is that although we are making progress with our attempts to what I call right zone Menlo Park, I think we need to go as far as we can go with our new numbers and for zoning, and that means a minimum of 100 units per acre in our downtown area. We own that property, and therefore we have, if not, we have the obligation to use it to its fullest. The second comment I want to make, and I've made this before, and that a Jack in the Box, Starbucks, a nail salon, and 4 restaurants is not a shopping center. There is no retail on the shopping center that is on Willow Road and Hamilton Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Jeremy Levine. Jeremy, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Good evening, commissioners, staff. Thank you for your time this evening and for the presentation. This is Jeremy Levine here. I am the policy manager for the Housing Leadership Council of San Mateo County. HLC exists to work with communities and their leaders to produce and preserve quality, affordable homes. And as part of that effort, in the last 2 years, we have commented on every housing element in San Mateo County, including a couple of drafts of Menlo Park. Now, the zoning today you're talking about is independent of the housing element, but it is related. The city's ability to demonstrate compliance with the housing element law relies on its ability to demonstrate capacity for new homes in its housing element site inventory, and demonstrating that capacity requires having the zoning to do it. Menlo Park has come a long way in its housing element. It has a lot of really cool programs, and it's come a long way in its zoning from what it started with in its initial proposals. There is still more that the city can do. And this goes beyond just the housing element. This is about the merits of actually making the development possible on the sites that Menlo Park has in its inventory, in its downtown, in Sharon Heights, and other areas. There are two ways that affordable housing is going to come to Menlo Park. It's going to be 100% affordable housing, probably mostly on city-owned land, and it's going to be mixed income market rate housing built with an inclusionary component. And so increasing base densities and increasing the densities allowed in the affordable housing overlay will, if you do that simultaneously, will make it possible to get more of the affordable housing Menlo Park needs in more places. The Planning Commission might have some limitations. The city may have some limitations on pursuing the zoning. And so I propose that tonight the Planning Commission recommend that staff look into what else could be done with zoning, both within and outside of the housing element, and make proposals on best practices to make it easier to build housing, not just to check a box, not just to fulfill the legal requirements, but to actually produce the affordable housing that we really need. So thank you for your time tonight and for your consideration. I look forward to the rest of your discussion.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be John Dogru. John, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Thank you, committee, and apologize in advance. I'm a little bit new to this. As a person looking to buy a home, I'll give you an example. There's a quadplex, and they have 675 square feet each for the homes, and they want 2.5 million. So it definitely needs to be bulldozed and rebuilt, but with the current density restrictions, if I bulldoze it and build 4 more homes, it's going to be again at 675 square feet, and it's going to be double. So I think it's really important to the R3 that we're able to expand, because even from a person that wants to build an investment property or just even building for myself, it doesn't make any sense. So I'm curious as to how much more are we going to be able to expand the available square footage to build on R3? Because if that was to expand, then we could build 4 affordable homes, and it wouldn't make sense to build exact same square footage, because you can imagine now I have to double rent for small 600 square foot 1-bedroom homes, and at the same time, nobody will be able to afford that, and they have to be forced to live in these decrepit buildings because the economics don't work out. So, I'm really curious as to how much more the R3, expansion or the density is going to grow. I think if we agree with that, we could actually then start to make homes that make economical sense. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Karen Grove. And this will be the last call for public comment. So if you would like to give public comment, please click the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen or click *9 on your phone. All right, so Karen, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Karen Grove, and I am commenting sort of just again, because I've made this comment before, but I think I heard Mr. Smith say up to 150 development units per acre for 100% affordable housing, which is great. However, I want to make sure what I would like to advocate for is that we are explicit about that and that it doesn't require a developer to piece together a puzzle that includes state law. Because last time I heard the presentation in more detail, we reached 150 development units per acre because within half a mile of public transit, there you can't limit density by state law. But I see that state law as a way to overcome cities who are trying to block affordable housing by not adequately zoning for it. So I don't want to be one of those cities. I would like us to zone for 150 units per acre when using our affordable housing overlay so that it's 100% affordable, and just like really signal to nonprofit developers that and to the community that this is what we're asking for and this is what we hope to get. I'm worried that if it's coded the way I think it still is, but that's a question, that once the housing project is actually like has some drawings and it's being proposed in their public meetings, and the community will say, what? I thought it was only for, whatever, lower density, not realizing that the state law was that we were really counting on it. So I'd just like us to be as transparent as we can be, both to make sure that we attract development for what we want to see built, and also for the sake of transparency so that the community knows what we're planning on. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. Our next speaker is a phone caller with the last digits 9091. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Hi, good evening. This is Catherine Dumont. I'm a resident of D3, and I'm a lifelong renter. I'm wanted to support the work that we're doing here in Menlo Park to increase housing at all levels of affordability. I'm having been renting pretty much my entire adult life, I've been seeing the whole spectrum of being able to afford to pay more for rent, and then as working less and coming to retirement, can see a need for housing for people on limited incomes like myself, and I've been talking to people about the zoning, upzoning downtown, finding a lot of support in the district around the downtown area. People like a very lovely young woman who works for the city of San Jose, but loves living in Menlo Park, who moved here from the north of San Francisco, and she really likes living close to downtown and being able to walk downtown, but she's very concerned about the businesses downtown and the health and vibrancy of the downtown. So I think like there are young people who are the future. We need housing for families, and we need to keep the schools full, and so housing for all levels, and downtown seems to be the place for us to work on creating a more open and inclusive and diverse community of Menlo Park that we can move forward with to the future. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. That seems to be our last commenter.
Great, thank you. So we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the commission for discussion and ultimately in action to make a recommendation to City Council regarding the various changes under consideration. And last time, staff recommended that our discussion be organized by the 7 programs that are listed in the agenda packet. And that seemed to work well. So if you're following along in the agenda packet, the programs starting on page 7, starting with program H4D, modify the AHO, and proceeding through the other programs, I would just like to suggest that today our discussion and feedback to staff on the zoning ordinance amendments also follows that organization, if that's cool with everyone. Okay. Great. So we'll start with program H4D, modify the AHO, and I believe the corresponding attachment A has the, exhibit 1 or attachment A has the ordinance language.
Vice Chair, if I may, the attachment A is the Planning Commission resolution, and then
Yes, okay.
it'd be Exhibit 1 to Attachment A.
Thank you. Exhibit 1 to attachment A, if you're looking for, following along and looking for the zoning language. Thank you. So if anyone has any comments and would like to start? Comments or questions? Commissioner Eric.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. First of all, thank you again to staff for all the work that has gone into this over the very, very long time that the city has been working on it. I'm going to make a general comment because I think it, at least hopefully, will lend some procedural and policy clarity to how I plan to approach tonight. So from my perspective, tonight we're at the end or towards the end, hopefully, of a very long process. And I think there's been a lot of great work done. And the most important thing that we can do is provide a strong recommendation to City Council in hopes that City Council can move swiftly themselves to approve this and we end up with a compliant housing element. Because if we don't, then there are negative consequences to that. And also we want a strong housing element to pursue the goals of the city. So from my perspective, I am not looking to make a ton of additional comments tonight. I think there's been a lot of great work done. So that's sort of, we're at the end of this process, and I think it's important to respect that. We are also at the beginning of another process, which is the process of implementing and this housing element and actually building the housing, which is arguably the more important part. And in 3 years, there's going to be a mid-cycle review looking at whether or not we've actually built this housing. So I think in that spirit and given the feedback from HCD up until this point, I would certainly be open to any discussion around ways that we could increase space densities or the affordable housing overlay, but not at the expense of making this process more complicated. So I think I'm definitely open to a discussion among the commission for those things. And I think it's important to realize that, as many public commenters have noted, we have to build this housing. So that's sort of where I stand. And I'm looking forward to the discussion and don't plan to make a bunch of additional suggestions myself.
Thank you. Appreciate your setting the context and setting the, setting the context. Commissioner Schindler.
Thank you, Vice Chair Doe. I would love to enthusiastically support many of the things that Commissioner Eric just said. I also believe that we are here tonight at the end of a very long process. And my approach is that the Planning Commission tonight is to provide feedback on the handful of very small number of new ideas that are tweaks. And I have no significant concerns about any of the new things that were called out in the staff report on top of the October 23rd meeting. And we are also here to ensure that the proposed language changes to the zoning and the land use element and the specific plan match the ideas that we've talked about to this point. And my takeaway is that they do, to the best that I can legally and sort of procedurally evaluate those. As Commissioner Eric said, we are, these zoning changes are a critical step in executing the housing element. This is actually the first big program that I'm part of that we are actually hopefully hitting a deadline for as part of the housing element. So it is a requirement in order for us to be compliant with state requirements, which means that if we hit our zoning deadlines and then we can hit certification for our housing elements, the city can maintain one of the most important things that we have, which is control and oversight into developing our land and our city the way that we want it to. So for all of those reasons, I fully support making sure we move this process through expediently and that we make sure we hit those big milestones. But I also want to be sure that I recognize the fantastic feedback that we continue to get even through tonight from community members. There are a lot of great ideas. First of all, there are a ton of great ideas about how we improve development and housing, particularly affordable housing in the housing element. There are some that are still part of the public discussion, and they may not be fully yet incorporated. We're not losing those ideas. We are, though, I do hope we make a pivot from a planning process into an execution process. And as Commissioner Ehrlich and I just said, that's really sort of the phase that we're moving into. The valuable ideas will still be there and we will come back to them, but I actually personally feel like it would be the wrong use of our time and resources if we said, oh, we're going to do another zoning in 3 months or 6 months, or we're going to, there's been discussion about additional environmental impact reports. Like, I don't think it's a good use of time to do that in the next 4 months, 6 months, 9 months. I would really like to see this commission and council and city resources focused on programs like, the other things that are laid out in the housing element. I would really love to see us, myself and all those other folks, focused on, the BMR guideline updates, the streamlining of project reviews, the community opportunity to purchase. Those are just a handful of programs that I think have the possibility of having a big impact. And of course, one that comes up a lot and is top of mind for me is the prioritization of affordable housing on the city-owned parking lots. I think that's a place where we need to demonstrate execution and use our resources wisely, use our city commission and council resources wisely. So with that, I would also like to follow Vice Chair Doe's guidance and stick to the first major category of feedback. So as it relates to the affordable housing overlay, I wanted to just clarify something that I said during the October meeting. I clarified my understanding of the use of the table in Table 1, but I don't know that I went far enough to clarify exactly how that table got used because I got a follow-up question later. I think it's important that the example that I gave include that the table is used additively. In other words, if 5% of a housing is very low, there's a bonus of 20%, and that's in addition to, so if there were 15% low-income units, there'd be a bonus of 37%. And that would be required because you need 20% affordable housing in order to qualify for the AHO. So that's a bit of an explanation. In the last meeting, I talked about when using the line item in that table that was 10%, and I received some follow-up questions. So again, still has to be 20%, and it's additive through each row of those tables. And I appreciate the clarification of naming the community development director as the decision maker on certain of the incentives in response to the feedback from October. And that is my feedback on that element. I will wait till Commissioner Doe moves us on through each of the segments.
Thank you, Commissioner Schindler. Commissioner Ferret.
Thank you. And thank you to my fellow commissioners, those here tonight and a couple that were absent, but here on October 23rd for really putting a lot of concentrated effort into each of these amendments. Totally agree with what was just said by fellow commissioners, so I won't reiterate it, but most importantly, we really want to begin getting this housing element implemented rather than continue to churn on the many new good ideas that come up. So, as we heard, we'll have review in, 2 to 3 short years. There's going to be lots of things we'll learn in the meantime. I guess where I come down to, the HOA or what is it called? The AOH? AHO, gosh, sorry. Don't have my acronyms down pat. Is a couple things. I appreciated the comments tonight about, from members of the public that I guess a question for staff, like it does feel like with the overlay, it might be more difficult for just a normal property owner that's not already a professional developer to discern what's possible on their parcel. So I guess my question is, would you also view it as sort of like not really saying what we want if we have the overlay and state densities and all these different things that actually are really difficult to kind of understand what's possible on their parcel? One, and then follow up to that is there, and as we move to implementation, an outreach plan to have conversations with property owners, particularly those on opportunity sites?
Thank you for the question. So we do understand that there are some layers in place, if you will, to apply the AHO on the site. Some of that is, as we've discussed in previous meetings, a little bit due to requirements of state law and what we've heard from the Department of Housing and Community Development at the state about needing to use the AHO and state density bonus law additively. And so whereas the AHO currently can be applied independently, it's either sort of one or the other, AHO or state density bonus law. We've tried to take the comments that we receive from the state and layer them in a way where we can get that ideal density of 150 dwelling units per acre that has been discussed with affordable housing developers, that we've heard from members of the public and from the Commission and Council. So we certainly understand that there is a little bit of work there, if you will, in order to get that. But if you think about the potential density bonuses that could be achieved on a site, it really is advantageous to a developer to have those significant bonuses that they could achieve. So we haven't gotten to the point of discussing an implementation plan for sort of outreach and like educational efforts, but I think that's certainly a wise idea and something that we could look into as we actually get into the real implementation phase of it.
Great. Thank you for that. Yes, I would strongly advocate for that when the time comes, in the not distant future. Anecdotally, I did speak with a property owner very recently who thought that the density assigned to his parcels was just going to be way too low to be viable, because he didn't seem to understand that actually there's all these other things that could bring it way up. And so I think that outreach might be really advantageous to the city in getting the units that we want, that could then drive the mid-year review saying, yeah, we kind of got it right, other than these little tweaks, rather than saying, oh my gosh, nobody's developing because they thought they only got 30 units or 40 units or whatever. So I think that'll be an important part, but I'll circle back when the time comes, once we're certified. Great. That's it for that one. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm so glad that everyone's saying this is not the time to be returning input from the community. But I did just want to go back to that 150 dwelling units per acre. Can there, and I only say because I feel like the input that has percolated into my mind from the community has kind of centered around kind of two-ish big things, one of them being this AHO overlay and that number and how it's achieved, and the other one being density around downtown, which we can talk to when we get to that. Is there a possibility that that 150 could be achieved without having to combine, and maybe this is what you were getting at, Commissioner Varick, without having to combine the city and the state process, that it could just be achievable through only the city AHO overlay alone as a way of creating an option for reaching that number? You can reach it through a combination, or you can reach it through the city's overlay alone. And I don't feel like that would necessarily derail the math that's gone on, that you, but just create more flexibility within that outer limit that has been established.
I mean, the AHO could certainly be designed in a way that it would not need to be additive to get to the 150 dwelling units per acre, but I think it would take a little bit more analysis to understand for a project that does combine, say the AHO goes to 150 dwelling units per acre, then considering what that means when they also can apply the state density bonus law on top of that, and what kind of scale of building you could get, and whether that's in keeping with kind of the community's expectations, what we feel is best for the neighborhoods right now. The other thing I would say is that in the downtown, in the specific plan area, there is the option under, I think it's AB 2339, all these numbers start to jumble together, but for 100% affordable housing development, they could have unlimited density and an additional 3 stories or 33 feet of height that they could add to a building above and beyond sort of anything that the city sets. So that's also one consideration. I think the final thing I would say is also keeping in mind that we're really trying to produce affordable housing through this implementation. We've demonstrated that we don't have an issue with producing market rate housing through the community, but getting that affordable housing is really the focus of this. And so the combination of state law, the AHO and state density bonus together, we think really does incentivize and sort of direct the efforts toward getting that type of development.
Yeah, thank you. And certainly don't want to add more analysis. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's not the appropriate thing to, but I think it speaks to one of our public commenters, Ms. Grove's comment saying that even though the state, for 100% affordable housing, state law allows unlimited density, I think what I gleaned from that comment is that we still send out the message, the intent. However, that creates more work and slows down the process, then that's not clearly something we want. But I just wanted to highlight that point that was made by some community members. Thank you. Any further discussion on this topic? All right, then moving on to program H4I, create new opportunities for mixed-use development. Commissioner Schindler.
Thank you, Vice Chair Doe. I have very little to say here, particularly the presentation clarified a couple of points that I would have otherwise asked, seeking to understand specific examples of financial services and professional office uses. The examples clarified that for me. I also appreciate the specific addition of the retention of the drive-through as permitted on the named parcels. In the October meeting, we talked about the fact that all these rezoning of commercial to mixed use and allowing residential would, in all of these rezonings, currently permitted uses would not be lost. And I know that that is retained here. So I think that is appropriate and very much in the spirit of what we talked about back in October. I didn't see anything in the language, the extensive language changes for the zones renamed, deleted, and modified that seemed out of alignment with the conversation from October. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schindler. Well, while others are considering, I will just add, I don't have any comments. It's consistent with what we discussed previously. And if the other commissioners are good, then we'll move on to program H4J, increase residential density and maximize development proposals. This is for the primarily the, let's see, R3 properties around downtown and R3 and R4 zones. Any comments? Commissioner Eric.
I do have a question here. I signaled that I wouldn't be suggesting any major changes, and I'm not. But with regards to the addition of the design guidelines for these properties, my understanding from previous discussion that we've had on this commission is that those design guidelines are meant for a few things, but one of them is to accelerate development by providing certainty to developers. And I was just curious if you could give a quick explanation of exactly how that would work. Like if a developer follows these guidelines, what will be faster about the process for building this housing?
So by setting out objective design standards, it really gives a developer more clarity about how they can exactly meet a design that can be developed without sort of subjecting it to sort of the open-ended architectural control process where you may not have an idea until you get to the commission exactly what is the required standard or sort of what's being looked for in a project. And so it sets out early on in the process kind of a way to comply with the city's standards for a building that meets sort of our community's interests upfront.
Okay, that makes sense. And does that mean that if they follow the design standards, then they wouldn't need like planning commission review, or they wouldn't need an architectural control permit, or just that staff would approve it faster? Sorry, I'm just curious for a bit more detail.
If I may add to what Mr. Smith started with. So I think the whole purpose behind the objective design and development standards and the standards that you're speaking to are so that someone knows that if they design their project to those standards, that their project is approvable. So as Mr. Smith indicated, taking that uncertainty out of the process, I believe is what's behind those standards.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to that happening in practice.
Thank you. Commissioner Farrick.
Thank you. Before I jump into this one, I just wanted to ask the city's attorney advice. There is a parcel that's specifically called out in this that I might be within a distance but I think we're all going to be living within a distance of all these, eventually, because this is a citywide thing. So I didn't know if I shouldn't comment on this particular piece or not.
So we did work through, city staff looked at all the property owned by the commissioners and looked at properties within 500 and 1,000 feet of property that you own. And I don't believe that any conflicts were identified for you.
Perfect. Great. Well, then with that, I'd like to, I think what Commissioner Eric was trying to ask is, it sounds like, if I'm gleaning, that it hasn't yet been established what the expedited process would be with design standards. Like, we don't know yet if we'll bypass planning commission or, architectural review if we set out design standards. Is that right? We just know it'll be expedited in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, but why don't I start this one and then I'll let
Sure.
Mr. Smith or Ms. Chow jump in as well. So the level of review is spelled out in your ordinance, whether it's
Okay.
planning commission review or a by right or a staff level review. But no matter who is reviewing the project, for residential development projects, you can only apply objective design and development standards. So regardless of who's doing the review of the project, those are the standards that will apply to that project.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question on just having these standards in the history of our city and probably others, typically they've been used to express sort of an aesthetic preference for a type of building, not necessarily to accelerate. And so is there a way to convey that in this update to the state so that they understand that the reason I just want to make sure we get certified. So I don't want it to come across as though we're trying to be super particular with architectural elements or things of that nature. I want it to come across as intended, that it's meant to make development more accelerated rather than hindered, if that makes sense.
I think it's becoming more and more common in jurisdictions throughout the state to see these objective design standards, and I think HCD actually, and I don't want to speak for them, but I think that they like to see these kinds of things, and so I think there's an understanding that by providing these upfront in the zoning, that it is a way of providing that additional assurance to a developer. And just to follow up a little bit on your previous question, there would still be an architectural control process the way that it's set up now in the zoning ordinance. Anything that is not a single family or two family building would need architectural control.
Okay.
But when it comes to the commission, then you sort of have that list of standards, and you're kind of checking the boxes, is essentially saying, yes, you provided this, staff sort of reviewed is accurate and correct, and then the developer goes on their way and builds the project, hopefully.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Thank you. Commissioner Schindler.
Thank you, Vice Chair Doe. I'm fully supportive of including the residential design standards and the green and sustainable building provisions. I'm glad to see it added for this denser residential side of things to match some of the mixed use design standards that are also included later in the proposals. I don't have any concerns about the minor updates to the bike parking requirements, which was the only other minor tweak to the concepts in this section. And the language all looked reflective of the ideas discussed back in October. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schindler, and I'll second those comments. I've feel like everything is consistent with the direction we discussed 2 weeks ago. If there's no further discussion on that item, we'll move to program H4L, modify the El Camino Real downtown specific plan. Any commissioner questions or feedback?
I have a question.
Commissioner Farrick.
Thanks, and I'm kind of lost in the report right now, so if someone can cue which page I should be looking back to. Because I had a question in mind, and it really kind of harkens to some of the public comments, but also just that conversation about the layering. So we recommended in August to increase to 100 dwelling units per acre. It's possible, given, depending on how that project comes together, that could take advantage of different bonuses. And I guess my question, sorry if the page is there, I guess the question is, if we were to, in the future, not on this one, increase that number, would the project still get even more? Like, let's say we said, okay, it'll be 150 because that's really what we want. Would they then also be eligible for even further density bonuses? Because it's always going to be in addition to whatever the city allows?
You want to answer? So for the state density bonus law, it would always be in addition to whatever the city is allowing. That's additive on top of anything. And then the other provision, I think it's AB 2334, that allows the additional unlimited density for 100% affordable housing development, and the additional height. That additional height would be on top of whatever else the city would set that height as for the different districts. So the only thing that would not be set up that way is the AHO, which has sort of those caps that are set.
Thank you, that's helpful. I know we've all been probably getting, not only tonight, but just from different emails through the week, some comments from people that really want to see us, go even further. But I feel really comfortable that given the layering, that this is a really solid place to be.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Farrick. I'll hold my comments until others have any other thoughts. No. Yes, I feel like we have heard from the community, and that was the other thing I was referring to. The comments have really honed in on this as the other thing. I believe that as it is now, we allow up to 100 dwelling units, and I don't know if maybe it's finally hit me that there's been many community members, a handful of community members asking for 100 as the base or the starting point. And I said this 2 weeks ago, I feel like between the push and the pull, staff has balanced the push and the pull for more and bringing it to this point. But still, I just want to express my appreciation to community members for just honing in and weighing in with their input on this issue.
Thank you,
Commissioner Schindler.
Vice Chair Doe. Similarly, I think that continued discussion of additional densities is one of those many great ideas that we will hang on to as this commission and council and city staff continues to look, years into the future. I'm excited, though, again, back to my earlier points about moving into execution phase. And my specific naming of the development of affordable housing on the city-owned parking properties I'm particularly appreciative that the language proposed here as an amendment to this specific plan just goes into a little bit more detail about the emphasis on developing those parking lots. I think there's a healthy balance between the city's commitment to continuing to offer parking for retail and commercial and businesses and in support of community need, and also developing that property. And I appreciate that that additional detail was added to the language of this specific plan. I have no concerns about the other additions or the specific language in these sections.
Great, then we'll move on. If I may, I believe last time there wasn't a whole lot of discussion on the remaining 3 topics: reuse sites, residential overlay, and childcare. So if commissioners do have comments, I might just suggest that, if that's okay, just, go ahead and comment on any of those 3. None.
Excuse me.
Commissioner Farrett.
Sorry. I watched the discussion from a couple weeks ago about childcare and the continued strong need and really big shortage that we have here. So my question isn't meant to kind of go in any kind of different direction there. I guess my thought is we've had occasionally in the past use permit hearings for childcare, home-based childcare in homes that seem, all seemed quite reasonable. I think if they get to us, we've probably they've gotten through some layers of scrutiny. I guess I'm just wondering if all of that if that's by right, even for dwelling units that are far smaller than we may have seen before, contemplating a childcare center in a very small residential setting. And so I guess it's a question of how does that, I guess it's a staff question. So if we're going to be developing a lot of different kinds of housing types, but saying childcare for up to, 14 children, is just kind of ministerially allowed. I guess there's a question of is there some sort of, square footage allocation or amenities criteria that would be needing to be met to make sure that it's a safe and appropriate place for such use?
So these home daycares would still need to go through a state licensing process, and the state does set certain criteria. I'm not super familiar with what those are, but I think there are some sort of basic requirements in place that need to be met. And so essentially what the state is doing is taking any additional requirements that the city has placed on those and said, if they meet the state requirements, then they're good to go. So we're essentially just reflecting that in our local ordinances to match what state law requires. But there would be that separate permitting process that they would need to go through.
Okay, and this may be it probably is addressed in state law, but I'm just curious if people that are renting are allowed to have a operated home-based daycare in their.
I believe so, but I don't know the answer specifically off the top of my head. We'd have to look into that for you.
Okay. I'm just curious. I don't want to derail this, but it did kind of come up in my head when I was reading how all that would be very, almost incentivized, which I get why. It's just, it could lead to some unintended consequences, I guess. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Farrick. Commissioner Schindler.
Thank you, Vice Chair Doe. On those 3 particular sections, I don't have any questions about the language that's used to express the concepts we discussed back in October.
Great, thank you. And I had similar questions to staff as Commissioner Farrick about the daycare, because there's a lot of strike-throughs through some things that seem like very logical precautions for if you're putting your child in a home daycare, like outdoor space and not being near noises, fumes, and hazards. So it's reassuring, one, to know that it's state licensing that would be in place, and also the explanation that it can't be treated differently than a home, basically. So before we move to a motion, any motion or a closing motion or closing thoughts? Any are welcome.
Sorry, I do have some closing thoughts before we move to a motion. I had the chance to attend the Planning Commissioner workshop last Monday in San Mateo, put on by the American Planning Association and some county organizations, which was great. And one comment that was made there that I thought was wise was, as cities were coming to the end of this planning process, to look forward to the next one, which is some ways away, but there's always a good opportunity to learn and plan for that one. So in that spirit, I think there are two things I just wanted to mention, and I don't know if anyone will remember them 8 years from now, but I'll put them on the record anyway. That at least were learnings from the part of this process that I was involved in, which was not the whole process. One is I would encourage us next time to be very thoughtful about how we structure any environmental impact report that we do around the regional housing needs allocation. It's been my experience that the way that the EIR was structured has constrained some optionality that we've had as we've gone through this process, or at least that has been what it seems like, given answers from staff. And I realize that's complicated, and I am nowhere near an EIR expert, but I would encourage us next time to think very carefully about if and how we do an EIR to give us maximum flexibility at that point. And then the second suggestion I would make, which perhaps would happen anyway, is there's been lots of discussion in this process around what is a realistic expectation of developers taking advantage of the zoning that we're putting in place. And I certainly hope that when we go through this next time, and even before that, we use the empirical experience that we will have as to whether or not developers take advantage of the zoning we're putting in place now to set realistic targets and put in place zoning that we have an even higher confidence will result in the housing that we want for our city and that we're required to put in place. So I will leave my comments there for us to revisit in 2029 or whenever we start doing this next one.
Thank you. Commissioner Farrick.
Thanks. Just another kind of parting, I guess, kind of overarching question or concern I have is kind of a staff to see if you've had a chance to review any other cities of similar kind of characteristics, any other cities that have been certified. Like, do you feel confident that we're submitting something? It looks great to me, but I don't know what to compare it to. So I guess I'd love your perspective on, are you feeling like we've gotten it to a place that's ready to be certified, or is there some thing that we're just completely neglecting to mention and surface here?
So for the housing element itself, that was submitted late last week on Friday to HCD. And I think whereas sort of halfway through the process, the reviewer from the state changed, and then we started to get some different perspectives midway through the process that was a little bit of a challenge to deal with. But toward the end, I would say that HCD has been very accommodating in working proactively with us to address their concerns and the comments that they still had. We had a meeting with HCD staff and some email correspondences, and we got some indications that made us feel pretty good about the housing element submittal that we turned back in. And so we're hopeful that this will result in certification of the housing element. And I think the zoning process that we're going through right now is sort of an indication that the city is serious about acting on its commitments and moving forward with the programs that we said we were going to do. So,
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schindler.
Thank you, Vice Chair Doe. In light of Commissioner Eric's questions and comments, I specifically wanted to just make a mention of an element of the staff report we hadn't yet discussed, which was the addendum of the SEIR, the subsequent EIR. And I think I wanted to, I also know that this is a topic of frequent discussion and feedback and sort of public comment. What is it? And so on and so forth. And so I would offer my dramatically simplified interpretation of what those 50-ish pages said. And I would appreciate it if staff would correct if I've oversimplified or incorrectly simplified. But that the recent enhancements to the housing element, the minor idea changes that we've been discussing through the last two meetings, sorry, even from August, I believe, would be expected to potentially result in additional housing being produced. I think the number was 860 something, but that the impact of that additional housing would not be meaningfully different from the risk that was already contemplated by the subsequent EIR, and that the things we were doing, the risk mitigation steps that were already required by the EIR, would not need to change in order to reduce the risk of that incremental housing. That's my simplified version of it. I think it's important that we call that out, because I know we regularly get questions and comments about the environmental impact and people wanting to understand what greater housing density will do to the city from a number of environmental perspectives. So I guess I turn that as a half question to staff. Is that a roughly accurate synopsis?
I think that was very eloquently stated. So yes, I agree.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for Commissioner Schindler for addressing that. I think that there always is the confusion of, well, how can all this development not cause more impact? No, it will, but so appreciate the clarification you provided. Commissioner Farrick. Oh.
I actually don't. I wrapped up already.
Oh, great. Okay, well, I will just throw in, it's been said many times, appreciation to staff for the immense amount of work that this represents, and to the community members for really highlighting concerns and helping all of us to digest what is really complex. I think it has pulled us in a better direction to have community input and staff input. And speaking as an individual commissioner trying to make sense of all of it, it is extremely helpful to have those voices weigh in. And just reading through the strike-throughs, I feel like there is a notable shift in the language from one of, maybe holding on to something or preservation to something more emphasis on vibrancy and diversity. And I'm really grateful for the very noticeable shift. So with everyone having had a chance to comment, I think we are now seeking a motion to approve the resolution. Let's read it to make sure I get it right. To consider and make a recommendation to the City Council on proposed amendments to the City of Menlo Park General Plan Land Use Element, El Camino Real Downtown Specific Plan, zoning ordinance, and zoning map to implement zoning-related programs in the adopted 2023-2031 housing element. Would anyone like to, Commissioner Schindler?
I would like to move that the Planning Commission adopt resolution in attachment A with all of its subsequent exhibits and recommend to City Council that they make those amendments to the general plan, specific plan, and zoning ordinances accordingly.
Thank you. A first from Commissioner Schindler.
Second.
A second from Commissioner Eric, and we will move to a vote. Commissioner Eric,
Yes.
Commissioner Farrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Schindler.
Yes.
I am also a yes, so that is 4 yeses and 3 absent, and the motion passes. Looking to staff, see if you.
The balloon drop. Yeah.
All right, so I believe that we can close our public hearing and item F1 and move to G, informational items.
Yes, thank you. Planning Commission, there was, yes, excitement over here by staff. So thank you for working through the housing element with us this evening and the last meeting and throughout this process. We certainly appreciate your feedback and commitment to this project with us. So we do have back-to-back meetings. So next week is another Planning Commission meeting. We do have a number of single-family homes before the commission. I believe we have 4 use permits, and then there was a substantial conformance memo that has been called up, so that will be also on the commission's agenda. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Chow or staff? Commissioner Farrick.
Yeah, just because I know it's never quite the right time. I know it's surfaced a few times before about how we might have a hearing or a discussion in a couple things that have been brought up, whether single-family house remodels need to come to commission. That's kind of the bigger one. And then not from me, but a different commissioner raised to revisit the start time of the meetings. And so I know we weren't able to discuss them at that time, but I just wanted to kind of prompt that we haven't seen them put on the agenda so that we can discuss them. So I just wanted to flare that up.
Thank you. I think one might be more easy than the other, so we can certainly look at the start time. I think the other, in terms of looking at the overall processes for single-family home review, that is definitely a much larger policy question that would be directed by the City Council if that is something that they would like staff to work on.
Commissioner
Thank you. Commissioner Farrick's question reminded me of something that had occurred to me in the last few days. I was wondering if there was a ETA for the 2024 meeting schedule.
Yes, thank you. That would likely be brought forward to the December 4th Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And if there's no more questions on informational items, I think we can adjourn this meeting.